and then I started writing as myself, as Phyllis Okon. I've written my curriculums up, Mediumship Made Easy and Expanding Mediumship. And then I wrote a book of affirmations, which oddly enough, I use when I do readings. Towards the end of my reading, I ask the reader to pick a page number. And when I read them, what's on that page, invariably, it turns out to be something that they needed to hear from their relative or their friend on the other side. It's the same good advice that they would have given them here, or it brings them closure.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Daily Soul Bites Show. I am your host, Bola Abimbola, and this is the show where we interview guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs who share their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very special guest all the way from Long Island in New York, Phyllis Okon. Welcome to the show, Phyllis.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I'll read a bit about your bio before we start, Phyllis. Phyllis Okon is the CEO of a global chauffeured ground transportation company. Phyllis co-founded this company with her late husband almost 50 years ago. And after he passed, she launched the Mediumship business, which is now endorsed by Seatbelt Psychic Thomas John. Phyllis's unique experiences have made for a compassionate and understanding mediumship, as well as being a CEO and an author. And Phyllis says that life does not end when someone dies, and you don't have to give up on anything at all because of age. I love that. I love that. Thank you for joining me today, Phyllis.
Oh, thank you for having me.
What I would love to know, Phyllis, is how you came to this place of really navigating this physical illusionary matrix as a CEO, and how that kind of launched you into your mediumship business.
Well, it was a journey. You know, we all deal with grief differently. Mm-hmm. So, as you said, I founded the company with my husband 50 years ago. We started in a kitchen, and I was a social studies teacher. And I said to him, I would be happy to do his back office, but I wanted to start a family. So we had no idea it was going to become as big as it is. I mean, we'd open eventually in 11 offices. We have 750 people work for the company. We're globally well known. We're reliable, safe, and we've launched the careers of a lot of different people. We've, you know, I like to say we've sent a lot of kids to college, you know, all the people who've worked for us, you know, so we did that. And my sons are now in the business. My brother is the CFO. My ex-sister-in-law runs her department. We have a lot of different people working in the company, and it became a family kind of enterprise. Well, he passed in 2018. And when he died, I was going to mediums. I had been going to mediums since I lost my father 25 years ago. Well, we started even a little bit before. When I lost my grandmother, which was 40 years ago, we started going to mediums. And so I would go to mediums. And then when I lost my husband, they all said to me, you could do this yourself. And of course, I didn't believe them. And one of them said, I'm going to teach you. So I had started lessons with him through FaceTime on the phone. And that was in 2019, the end of 2019. And unfortunately, we went into lockdown in 2020. So my whole business shut down because nobody was traveling. You know, I do ground transportation, a lot of work with the movie studios, a lot of work with the Fortune 500 company. Nobody was traveling. So I was holding the company together with daily Zooms with all of our staff all over the country. And I started taking lessons with assorted mediums through Zoom. You know, Zoom made that kind of thing available. So I studied with Thomas John. I studied with Kim Russo, Joe Scheel, Richard Knight. I mean, anyone who offered a course, Lisa Williams, I took the course. And it was about a 2-year journey. And one of my last courses was a mentorship with Thomas. And out of the 86 students, the only person he endorsed was me. So that was a huge confidence builder. And then my sons had a podcast and they invited me on. And I went on and they brought people on. They said, okay, Mom, go ahead and read them. So I started reading. And the next day, my daughter-in-law bought me A Square Inch of Scotland. I became, bless you, I became known as Lady Phyllis, and because I have the title. And but I don't know if you know, but I'm also an author. I've written and published 83 books. So I had names as I did it under pen names. So I had names for that. So I had to have a name for mediumship. And we chose Lady Phyllis. My son created the website, and I started doing that. So I was reading people for about a year, and everybody, whoever I was with, they expressed they wanted to learn too. So I actually wrote a curriculum and I started teaching it. And now I teach assorted courses. I'm mentoring, I teach courses, I do, anything I can to give back to the community, and help other people find that, finally hear the voices or see the signs that we all do.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love the fact that you have been aligned into spirituality and your gifts from a very young age. I believe it was your husband passing that really motivated you. That was the final deal breaker. Something leads us to take any kind of timeline jump. Something really enables us to do that. Some of these experiences, which do not always leave a good taste in our mouth, sometimes, give us an opportunity for us to take a kind of deep dive into something that may very well be our life's purpose. Because I do love how your that experience transformed because of the way you responded to it. So I do want to ask you, Phyllis, what is mediumship? How would you define mediumship?
A lot of people always go with psychic mediums. You always hear that linked together, and people say I'm psychic, but it's actually what I learned is that they're two very different things. So a psychic is somebody who can kind of open up to the universe, and they can tell your past, present, or future. A medium connects directly to an ancestor or someone who you love, a beloved on the other side, someone that you've lost on the other side, and they can bring in information. There are lots of different types of mediums. I happen to be an evidential medium. So what I try to do is I will bring in evidence. Perhaps it's a conversation, it could be a nickname, it could be a birth date, it could be something that is not readily available, and that will provide proof that the medium is indeed speaking to your person on the other side. It's also, to me, it's not, I don't see it as, a showing off kind of talent or whatever. To me, mediumship is a sacred duty to bring comfort and healing and closure to somebody who's suffering from grief. And I think that's one of the things that makes my reading special, is that I understand grief. I lived it. And that's what propelled me. That was the catalyst, as you said, that propelled me to try it, to suspend my own disbelief in myself. Because, of course, when I started, I figured, I can't do that. It's, you have to be born with the gift. And what I learned is that everybody could do it. I often say it's like this. Say you're sitting at the table with your spouse or your partner, and they say to you, could you get the ketchup? So you get up and you go to the refrigerator and you open the door, and you're staring in that door and you don't see the ketchup. And then your partner comes over and says, what's the matter with you? It was right in front of you. Well, that's kind of what is going on. It's right in front of us. We've been conditioned not to see it. Our third eye has been calcified, for lack of a better word. And, just like when you were that child in your bedroom calling mommy or daddy in, mummy, we would say, right, in London, mummy or daddy, you'd call them in, and they would look under the bed with you and say, nothing there. And they'd open the closet door and say, nothing there. And it's your imagination. So we tend to just kind of stop seeing these things. I find it really exciting when somebody tells me their grandchild is speaking to their missing spouse as though they know them and they never met them, or they'll say they're right there because their eye hasn't calcified yet. So I think it's just a matter of awakening those abilities, but everybody has the possibility of doing it if they want to. I think the hardest part, what I see with my students, is believing in yourself enough and having the confidence to be wrong, because you can't do this unless you're willing to be wrong, because that's how you figure out how you're right.
I am also a medium. I'm a Reiki energy practitioner. And I remember, because I do believe we do have these gifts from childhood. We just get conditioned not to relate to it, or not to develop it, or not to connect with it. 'Cause I remember being in my father's bedroom when he passed. He was actually ill in hospital, and my mum had gone to see him in hospital, and I saw him in his
Mhm.
bedroom, and I thought that he had come back home from hospital. But when my mother came back home and said he had passed, I said to her, "But he came home." Because no, he did not come home. He actually passed in hospital. So that was an inkling for me. And I hear his voice. My grandmother, my mother passed in 2020. We're even closer now than we were when she was living. So it's always an interesting thing when you come to this through the path of grief,
Mhm.
because it allows you to really know that the life of your loved one has not really ended in that way. They're still with you. Just give us some strategies or tips or insights that those who are going through grief may actually find working with you helpful. Coming to see a medium to hear about where that person is, what they have to say to you, and having them as one of your toolkits to guide you on your journey from the other side. Because there is that resistance that we sometimes have, and I love that you mentioned the third eye, and how that does need to be something that allows us to receive, because receiving is different from perceiving.
Right.
And we need to be able to receive that information, but there is a resistance because of the kind of different cultures that we have. I'd love to hear your perspective on how you support your clients, or how you could give, how those who may be going through grief, or who may want to develop those connections with spirit, and who may feel a little bit, reluctant and doubt. That is always a big thing.
Well, the first thing that I always talk about with people who are deeply grieving is that they should get help. That bereavement group or a therapist is really important, that they shouldn't feel that they're going through it alone, because it is, I don't care if you're prepared or you're not. I had instances, my father passed away in the airport unexpectedly. My husband was sick for 15 years. It was expected, and he kept cheating death. And when it finally happened, there was relief because he suffered, but there was that feeling like, why didn't he come back this time? What, how did this time get him? He had lung cancer, and he was the longest living survivor with lung cancer at that time at Sloan Kettering. Um, but the point is, you can't go to a medium with the expectation of what you're going to hear, because a medium basically has no control over what information is going to come over. If they're coming with the password to the safe, or if there's something in particular, a catchphrase that was there, they can't come with. If they get it, that's great. But spirit is using the medium's toolbox of memories. So my memories are never going to be the same as the person. I'll only interpret whatever I see. I'll tell them exactly what I see, hear, and feel. But it's up to them to kind of make the puzzle pieces fit together. And I always tell people when they start that when I do a reading, it's a little bit like making a puzzle out of the sky. It's all kind of one color, and it's really hard to fit together. But when it fits together, there's real magic that happens, because all of a sudden somebody says, "Oh my God, I do remember those cufflinks." Or, sometimes it's that message. More often than not, I hear people carrying around this guilt that they weren't there when the person passed. So a lot of times it's about that they don't want their life shrunk down to that last 5 minutes, that they want to be remembered for, or hold on to the memories of the other parts of their life. But I do tell people, look for something that looks different, that doesn't fit in. Those are the signs. That if you see a turkey instead of a regular birds walking around in your yard, that's a sign. It's not that you're going to get a telegram. Look for sequences of numbers that keep popping up. For me, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. that always pops up. And that for me is a sure sign that my husband is nearby. When I was choosing a venue with my kids for their wedding, a song came on at the venue that was a song my mother used to sing to me when I was a child in the bathtub. And she used to change the words, but it was not a popular song in the current time. It was definitely from the 50s or the early 60s. So that when I heard that song and it was just came on the loudspeaker in this venue, I knew that was my mom saying, this is a good place. Tell them that you're okay with it. So I had been missing her. Of course, she used to help me pick all those things. So when I heard that song, I knew that was a message. We tend to take certain things for granted, that if you see something, you don't realize that it is a sign. So for instance, what I tell people, they'll say to me, I don't see the signs, or I haven't seen anything unusual, or I'm not feeling it. I tell them, before you go to sleep at night, ask your person to give you a sign and give them something, like maybe something specific like nickels, because they're different than pennies. They stand out. Or maybe a specific bird or a song or whatever it is, but ask them for that sign. I mean, don't ask them for something, to put the Eiffel Tower in the middle of New York City. You're not going to get that. But if you ask for something that's doable, more often than not, you're going to see it. I will tell you that my daughter-in-law was asking for a sign. She had lost both her parents and she was really missing them. And she'd call me up and she says, why aren't I hearing from my father? I want a sign. So I turned inward and I heard the word squirrels. So I said to her, Jen, look for squirrels. There's something about squirrels. Your father said squirrels. Maybe 2 hours later, she calls me up laughing and crying at the same time. And she says, you're not going to believe this. We heard something thumping in the attic, and turns out we're filled with squirrels up in the attic. So a coincidence? A skeptic is going to say it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a sign. Another one is one of my dear friends was missing her son. It was the anniversary of his passing. And I said to her, he's showing me daisies. I see. And when I say they're showing me, it's a flash. When you get it's a flash. It happens so fast. As you know, it's in and out. I said, I see daisies, and I don't know why it's daisies, because usually I just say flowers, but I knew to say daisies. She goes, no, I don't have daisies. I don't associate daisies with him. I said, I don't know. He's showing me daisies. Maybe an hour and a half later, I get a call. And again, she's laughing and crying at the same time. On the anniversary of his passing, she always donates to a homeless shelter, or, where abused moms go. She donated pads for them to change their babies on. So the person who ran that asylum place came running out to her with a bouquet of daisies in her son's memory. And that was her son letting her know that he's with her, that he is participating. So there are signs all around. It may come as a simple thing that you're going to see a dessert that you never see, and all of a sudden you go into a restaurant and they have Charlotte Russe, and that happened to have been your mom's favorite dessert. So signs are mundane and everyday, but if you start to look for them, you'll see them all around you.
This is all about intuition, how we can really begin to understand how we communicate, or how spirit communicates with us. A lot of what we can intuit depends on what our gifts are.
Right.
Some of us, we need to have, I think it's called clairtangency. There are about 8 different types of clairs. And I'd love you to kind of shed some light on that as well, because this really is good for people, or I'm sure for those who want to develop their gifts, to know which is my own particular choice. What have I chosen to align to in this lifetime? Because we're not talking about gifts that have just arisen in one lifetime. I believe some of these gifts have come from previous lives. And really what we want to do is activate them, in this particular lifetime. So, just to give us a kind of a rundown, different types of clairs, different types of ways of receiving intuition, receiving the messages that are there.
Well, that you're 100% right. That was one of the turning points for me to understand that just like we have six senses, we have many different clairs that we receive. So, of course, everybody knows about clairvoyance, right? Everybody, on a clear day, you can see forever. Clairvoyance. Everybody knows about that, which is seeing in your mind's eye. Clair is seeing voyance, through your mind's eye internally. But there's also clairaudient. People hear things and clairaudient doesn't have to be that, or even clairvoyance doesn't have to be that you see it in your mind's eye. Very often when I'm doing a reading, if I find that all of a sudden my eyes are drawn to an earring, I know to say, what's the deal with your mom and her passing and a pair of earrings? And then invariably there's a story that's specific to this person and their mom. So it's anything involving the eyes, just like clairaudient is anything involving the ears. If I'm doing a reading and all of a sudden I hear a whistle, I'll just turn around and say, gee, I'm hearing a whistle. Is there anything to do with the railroad? Or I hear a train. You can hear it internally, you can hear it externally. Or sometimes you hear a song. If you get in the car and you turn on the radio and, for a friend of mine whose son went to the University of Alabama, Sweet Home Alabama comes on every time she gets into that car. That is a clairaudient. There's clairsentient, which is you feel like how many people walk into a room and they meet someone and they sense, oh, I better not bring up this or that because I feel like it's not going to be received well. Or even you go on a job interview and just when to shut your mouth just by looking at the person. That's clairsentient. There's I can't think of the there's clairgustance, which is eating. I was doing a reading for a couple in Poland whose son had unfortunately passed away. Now, they were on a Zoom call. I was in Long Island. They were in Warsaw in Poland. And all of a sudden, I could taste the texture of cooked apples in my mouth. Now, I'm allergic. I haven't had an apple in 30 years. And I could taste apple pie, and I heard the crunch of like the strudel topping. I could taste that crusted sugar. I just knew those tastes, and I could actually and I could smell the cinnamon. And I turned around and I said, why am I tasting and sensing apple strudel? And the mother started to cry. And she said, well, I cooked an apple strudel for my son this morning because it was his favorite dessert. And so in her house, her whole house smelled of apple strudel. One of the first ways my husband used to communicate with me was with cigar smoke. I would get into the car and it would be filled with cigar smoke, only there was nobody there smoking. And it wasn't the actual smoke, but I could smell the cigar smoke. Or, we'll be sitting in the backyard and my grandchildren will come running over and say, he's here, there's cigar smoke. They would smell it when there's nobody around. You mentioned clairtangency. Clairtangency is the ability to hold somebody's watch and get a feeling from the watch. There's claircognizant, which is just a knowing. For instance, when I flew with my father home from Vegas with my kids, I was upstairs. My kids were getting an autograph. There was a celebrity on the plane and they were getting an autograph. And all of a sudden I had this sense of urgency and I said, we have to leave. And I opened a door and looked down a door because I thought it was a way out. It was completely dark. And I said, oh my God, my father just died. And my son turned and he says, you're always saying those crazy things. Nothing happened. He's downstairs. And by the time we got down, we happened to have a driver picking us up. He said to me, something happened to your father. He's on the floor. My father had just passed. So that's claircognizance, is just an understanding. Or you say to one of your kids, I don't want you to go out tonight. And then you find out that, people don't make a flight because they just have that feeling that something's going to happen. So there's all different types of clairs, and we are so inundated with devices and with noise coming from all over that we miss a lot of the things that are around us. We miss a lot of the messages. One of the ways I show people that they're getting messages, and I'll do a quick exercise with you. If you can read that word, I don't know if the sun is in the way, if you could read it out loud, mediumship, and then you read it quietly with your mouth closed, That's what they sound like. They don't sound like your loved one. They sound like the inside of your head, the way your voice sounds. So you may be getting those messages all along, and you think it's your inner voice when it's not. It's them talking to you.
It is so important, I think, for us to know which particular one of those clairs or a group of clairs. And sometimes it's not just a one gift. There may be a number of gifts, and that openness to want to connect. Because once we have a zero tolerance to not connecting, because it's a choice, and we must feel ready, even if the frequency we're vibrating at is still not allowing us to embrace it. It takes time. It's not a one-day switch in that way. Well, sometimes it happens, but a lot of us, we have already been connecting with it for many years, and we then get to that place where we are ready to connect even deeper. So it takes years, I have to say, because there is that physical conditioning that really stops us from trusting. Because having trust is a really big thing. Being able to trust what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're sensing, what you're smelling. I remember, with a client, I smelled Gucci. Now, I at that time used to wear Gucci. This is the perfume, Flora.
Right.
And I wasn't sure, was it me or was it, so it's about trusting, just trust. And the questions we ask are key. Once we are making that inquiry, allowing ourselves to have no judgment, because we have to stay in that neutral place, that present space of no judgment, no expectations, having an expectancy of connecting, but having no expectations and really being open. So I wanted to add, to that, because yes, it's one thing for us to become more aware of the gifts that we have, but also trusting and allowing ourselves to stay neutral without judgment. I would love to hear about your books, Phyllis, because I know you've also written, you're also an accomplished author. Do you want to tell us a bit about, because you've written a lot of books, actually, quite a number. Yes, quite an accomplished, and you're also a publisher. So I would love to, my mum was also a writer and a publisher. So that's, that really shows by the time you're publishing books for others, it really shows that this is a passion. So can you tell us about that part of your life?
Well, like I said earlier, grief affects us differently. When my mom died, she was my best friend. We were very close. She and my husband got lung cancer within 3 months of each other. She was terminal from the start. I knew she only had 2 years, but we did everything together. She worked with me. She was the CFO of my company. I saw her every day, and we would go to the ballet. I just totally I was gobsmacked when she passed. And I really missed her. And for the first time in my life, I felt depression. And again, we get back to, I didn't know to go to a bereavement group. I didn't know that I should see a therapist. I was completely, children eventually do lose parents. It wasn't like I was a child, but it was really hard. So my son said to me, write a book. They were trying to pull me out of this depression. So they said, everybody's got to come in with a story or the start of a book the next day. So I wrote a thing called Captain No-Beard, An Imaginary Tale of a Pirate's Life. And it was based on playtime with my grandson. And I brought it in, and my kids said, my 2 sons, we worked together, like I said, and they said, this is really good. And they set me up on CreateSpace. So I sort of, like Alice through I fell down the rabbit hole of publishing. I worked with an illustrator. It's not just, you just don't write a book. There's so much involved. And because of what I do, and we're so heavily involved with Hollywood, I knew how to publicize because I'd been watching the publicists for years. I'd be booking their cars and stuff. So it was a natural for me to figure out. Now, my son published books, so I took on the management of his books. And so the first book that I published, I don't know, about a month or 2 after it was published, I got a note from CreateSpace, from my mentor at CreateSpace, and he said, we're really delighted and honored to tell you that you were named to Kirkus's Best of 2012, which I didn't know, but apparently that was a huge honor. And the book started to win awards. So my husband said to me, "You were meant to do this. Write more." So we were in Vegas. We were opening up our Vegas office. And my grandson pointed to the Eiffel Tower and he said, "What's that?" He was 4 years old. How to explain a cultural icon to somebody? So I decided to write a series for his age group called If You Were Me and Lived In. And I ended up doing 22 countries, which was basically to introduce culture and customs to children 4 to 8. What kind of money you would use, what would you call your mom, what would you call your dad, what would you call your grandparent, what kind of foods would you eat? And it opened me up to a whole community of homeschoolers, and I got so actively involved with them. And I would write up spreadsheets. I was doing personal appearances. I had my own podcast. I was doing all these different things with it. Then I expanded it to do a historical series. And then I started doing early reader chapter books. And then I did, I don't even have it here. I did joke books. I got picked up by a publisher, and I did, my joke book ended up outselling everything on Amazon for 2 solid months in 2020. So I wrote 2 more joke books. I did a spy book. I did all these different books. I also wanted to see if I could write adult fiction. So I changed my name so it wouldn't be confused. And because I didn't want the kids reading the horror stuff. And I wrote adult fiction. And one of my books right now is a script that's being shown around in Hollywood. So we'll see what's going to happen. And then I started writing as myself, as Phyllis Okon. I've written my curriculums up, Mediumship Made Easy and Expanding Mediumship. And then I wrote a book of affirmations, which oddly enough, I use when I do readings. Towards the end of my reading, I ask the reader to pick a page number. And when I read them, what's on that page, invariably, it turns out to be something that they needed to hear from their relative or their friend on the other side. It's the same good advice that they would have given them here, or it brings them closure. But I regularly do Facebook Lives, and I read. I don't like to read people through Facebook. I like to see people when I read them. But I will, read the page if they pick the page. So, the books keep coming, and they're a lot of fun. And I'm assisting my son. He's got 3 scripts in Hollywood, so we're waiting to see what's going to happen with that. But we have a lot of fun as a family. We do everything together. My other son designed our covers, and we just really, we have a good time.
Oh, I love that. That just shows how phenomenal you are as a mother. I think when you grow up and your kids are also now independent and they're able to relate to you, they, not just relate to you, work with you, encourage you. That is a phenomenal journey. Powerful soul contracts. I think our parenting contracts are really powerful soul contracts.
I want to add that my daughter-in-laws are just as involved. They're part of the business. They take part. They participate in this. One daughter-in-law gets me interviews. The other daughter-in-law sets up my calendar, and they're involved in the other business as well. So it's really fun. Now my grandchildren are already coming in. I have 2 grandchildren that have taken the courses. They're doing all sorts of things. So it's really nice that we all work together.
I think it's powerful because you are setting that legacy of spiritual awakening. You are allowing your mediumship to be seen as part of the norm in your family.
Yes.
And that is a big jump because not every family has that opportunity. It's my younger baby, my second son, is a medical doctor, and he tends to, I would say he is not into my spiritual practice, but he does respect it. And I know that he will be a different kind of doctor from the doctor who doesn't have any opportunity to see or observe the power of spirit, the healing power of spirit. So yes, I love that. That is part of your theme that you've come to actually explore. I've also written a book, the Daily Soul Bytes book. This is a book that is now available anywhere books are sold. It's available in Kindle, paperback, as well as audiobook. and it's published by Bible Press, a division of A House. And Daily Soul Bytes really just talks about the different perspectives that we have within us, the higher perspectives and the lower perspectives. Lower perspectives that are usually based on the survival, the fear-based beliefs that we have, and the higher perspectives that are usually based on love, on gratitude. And every single experience that we have, we will have these perspectives within us. And I say that the universe is a universe of choice and alignment. These perspectives are there, and they really are about us becoming more aware of what it is we are experiencing, we are perceiving, whether it's low, whether it's high. And it's not about judgment, it's about difference, a difference in frequency. And we can come to align to what really gives us our best outcomes in every moment. And this is something that I know a lot of those who want to do mediumship will say, how do I stop myself from aligning to dark spirits? How do I stop myself from aligning to those who I do not want to align with? And I always say, and I want to hear your perspective about this, but I always say that it's like going to the supermarket or going to the superstore. You will meet all kinds of people, and it's about how you align. But I'd love to hear how you support your students to really overcome that fear, because mediumship is such a powerful tool for us to experience our spiritual path. So how do you advise them to overcome that belief that I will connect to something really dark, or I am not able to do this because I cannot control this? How would you guide them through that?
I think the biggest thing is what you said. It's about trust. You know, they have the corporate exercises where you fall back into your coworker's arms. You kind of have to see your higher self or your spirit guide. And I think the second lesson, we search out we do a meditation where we search out our spirit guide. So you have to trust that your spirit guide. I never got into a reading not believing that they're not going to be there for me. You have to believe that they're going to be here, and you have to trust the information that's coming through is accurate, and you're meant to say it because you have to trust that they're giving it to you. As far as attaching to dark energies, I do think that the dark energies are more here and manufactured by negativity in people rather than having dark energies. And I think that I teach my students how to protect themselves, and kind of like it's kind of like when you're on a diet and you don't want to eat the fattening stuff on the table. You just don't take it. You eat the healthy stuff. So you align yourself with healthy spirits and you look for those and don't look for the others. And they're not going to, I don't believe that they will attack you. I don't think that they will I think you have to invite them in. You have to look for it. You have to actively search for it. So I think that if you go out there with goodness and your intentions are pure, it's basically law of attraction. You will attract what you put out. So I think that if you're in a bad mood, that's one of those days that you kind of have to shake it off or reflect or stay by yourself. And if somebody's giving you that vibe, you kind of have to put up a boundary and just not accept it. It's a gift that you're not going to accept. You have to be selective with who you're going to align yourself with.
Yes, totally. I think it's about alignment without judgment. Alignment without. Yeah. There is space. There's space for all. There's space for dark and there's space for light. Because I had an out-of-body experience in 2020, and I really experienced myself as a light in this dark place. It was a space, and I could see myself as the light, just glowing, and it was a pulsing light, very, very powerful, and that helped me not to be able to deny the existence of spirit at a deeper level, because I knew that my spirit had left the body, and I felt it coming back into the body. So there are different things that we will have, different experiences that we will have that will deepen our beliefs, deepen our relationships, deepen our practice. And I think it's really about knowing that it's a journey, and it's about allowing ourselves to open up We may not have proof. That's the difference between proof
Mhm.
and knowing. That knowing that I'm on the right path. I'm seeing the synchronicities that are positive, that exciting me, that's making me feel, feel high. Because we do know when we feel high and we know when we feel low. And following those synchronicities on that path really does help us to develop those kind of mediumship skills. And I wanted to find out, Phyllis, what else could you share with our listeners, about those kinds of synchronicities? Because synchronicity is really a powerful way to live a spiritual life. Once you're a medium, what are the things that, or when you are developing that those skills, your clairvoyance or your clairaudience or clairtangencies or clairgustatory, how do you really come to live? You're waking up in the morning. What kind of habits? What kind of habits do we need to have on that journey? Because it's a very powerful way of living life, not as a victim, but as a co-creator with God, with universal energy. What kinds of tools or habits would you say really help us to stay healthy on that spiritual journey on a daily basis?
The most important thing is, as I said, is make boundaries. The problem is that as soon as people see that you can do what you can do, you become everybody's entertainment. You get invited to a lot of parties, and you realize that you're the free entertainment. So you have to learn when to allow it and when to shut it down. You also have to know when your advice or your abilities are not part of like, in other words, you can't just turn it on and always have it on for people. Now, I don't find it taxing, and I don't have spirit talking to me all day. Just like I was able to tune out my husband when I didn't want to hear him, I can tune out spirit. So I'm pretty, my boundaries are pretty set, but I live a very full life. I get up early in the morning. I'm at work every day. I work with my brother. He's blind, and I serve as his eyes at the office. And, I'm there every day. I have a full life. I do readings all day. In the afternoon, I teach at night. I work with one of my sons working with writing during the day. So, and then there's babysitting and doing all the social things. So it's kind of like, just like those plates where you have portions in your plate, you have to have portions in your life. And you have to know that you can't just be on, because people will exhaust you. I did it in the beginning. The first month that I opened it and made it available, I realized that I spent too many hours a day. And as long as you're giving it away, people will just suck it out of you. So you really have to set boundaries and politely say, well, maybe if you want to make an appointment, or I only do that on Saturday mornings, or whatever it is. You have to set up boundaries, because, in your whole life, you have many different things going on in your life. You can't let mediumship take over your entire life. You need a diverse and active schedule. I exercise. I do all the things I'm supposed to do, except maybe lose weight. But I do everything that I can. I squeeze every ounce out of every day, because it's really important to me. And I even have downtime for very bad TV. So I make sure that I do all of those things. So the important thing is, if you're going to choose to do this, you have to set certain boundaries. You have to set a boundary.
I love that. I love the self-care aspect of this, because that's one of the really powerful things that helps us to stay grounded. Because I think really, really deep rest, giving ourselves time to rest, because the pace at which life goes, especially when we have a number of different, careers or paths or businesses, a lot of us have 1, 2, 3, 4 things going on at the same time. So I believe that self-care really, I do agree with you that, taking time, doing whatever. There's so many different ways to experience self-care. And it's about finding. I actually have a blog on my website that talks about over 100 ways to do self. It's important for us to find what works for us and incorporate that. And I love what you said about boundaries. because this is something about knowing when to switch off, when to turn off that, because that personality as a medium, that's a personality construct. And you have personality construct as an entrepreneur, as an author, as a mother, and we have to know when to flow, allowing each one to flow, but knowing when to shut down, when to really have that deep rest, deep restoration. So, yes, thank you so much, Phyllis. Do you have any final words before you tell us where people can find you?
I really, if people are missing, if they're missing someone, if they feel, try a gallery. If you're afraid of going to a medium, look for a gallery. I do them at least twice a month. And what's a gallery? A gallery is, for me, it's a Zoom. I do them on a Zoom, and it's like I always do it with 6 people and everybody gets read, but certainly other mediums have galleries with 100 people on it. Thomas John has it. Matt, I forget his name, he's in Boston. There's a fellow by the name of Matt. They do these galleries where you can watch other people get read. If you're afraid, you can watch other people get read. And, there's also an element of what we call piggybacking, which you may hear a reading that someone else is getting, but it applies to everything in your life. And, because a lot of people are just afraid to do this, or they don't, maybe they're afraid of the message they're going to get, whatever it is. So try with a gallery. Start, baby steps would be a gallery first. Go for a gallery. And then, if you're missing that somebody, if you need that closure, seek out a medium. But look up the reviews, check them on all the different sites. Make sure you do your due diligence. Just don't take anybody. Ask around, ask your friends who was good, who did they like, who did they not like. Make sure they're reputable. And that's what I always say. I choose my medium because I go to mediums too. I go to mediums based on what I hear other people say about them, and I think it's a really special part of my life. I think that, it really enriched my life going to mediums, and it enriched my life being a medium.
Same here, same here. I also have my mediums that I see, and it is really a part of using that, because I really believe that we are providing these messages to our own self through the medium, our higher selves. Our higher self is connecting with the medium to tell us what is something that will take us to the next level. So
Yes.
it's not about feeling empowered or feeling disempowered. It's really about knowing that we can receive any kind of information through different ways, and a medium is really one of those.
Yep.
And where can people find you, Phyllis?
Well, they can go to www.ladyphyllis.com, LADYPHYLLIS.com. And I'm on Facebook. I've got a website. I'm on Instagram. I don't really even follow those things. My kids handle it for me. But I'm on Twitter, and what they call X right now. And I'm also on TikTok. But if you look for me on Facebook, every month I run a special. It depends on the month that you book. There's always a special where you can get a discount. I have galleries, and usually on the weekends I go on and I do Facebook Live. So you never know what you're going to hear.
Oh, love that. Excited. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you for joining me today. Really beautiful conversation.
Thank you. It was lovely.
And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today, and to invite you to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Look out for new episodes of Daily Soul Bytes Show every Wednesday, and grab Phyllis Okon's books. To become a medium, it's all in her books, and she's very knowledgeable, and she has a wide, diverse range of experiences that she's put into her books that will be really, really helpful. Check out her websites, and I do also invite you to check out Daily Soul Bytes. It's on Amazon and anywhere books are sold, so that you can really become very familiar with the different perspectives within. We all have them, and it's all about alignment and familiarity. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes Show. Bye-bye.